let's now look more closely at probability distributions. Okay? So a probability distribution is a listing of the possible values of a random variable and the probability associated with each value. So let's think about an example. Let's suppose we have we go back to the die rolling experiment. Now, if we let x be the number we get from rolling a die, okay, then we know that the possible values of x are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? So possible values of x 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, each of these values happens with the probability of 1 over 6. So I can construct a table that looks kind of like this. So we have x here, we have the probability that x is equal to xk. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Right. Then I have 1, 6, 1 over 6. Okay. So in one column, I have the possible values of x. So it's this first column, right? We can call each of them, call these x sub k, right? And then in the other column, we have the probabilities, right? So here, this is the probability that x is equal to 1. This is the probability that x is equal to 2. This is the probability that x is equal to 3, and so on and so forth. Now, any probability distribution must meet two requirements. So we have requirements of a probability distribution. First off, the individual probabilities have to be greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to 1, right? So 0 must be less than or equal to the probability that x is equal to x sub k, right? Less than or equal to 1 for all possible x sub k. Right? So for all possible values of the variable x, the probability that x takes on each of those particular values must be between 0 and 1. And then the second requirement says that if we sum up the probabilities over all possible values of x, then that sum is equal to 1. In other words, the summation over all the xk's of the probability that x is equal to xk is equal to 1. Let me actually write down the interpretation of these requirements. So the first one says, for all possible values x sub k, the probability that our variable x takes on each of those values must be greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to 1. So that's the first requirement. And then the second requirement says that the sum of the probabilities over all possible values x sub k must be 1, must be equal to 1. Right, where x sub k denotes a possible value of x, of the variable x. Okay, so in a sense, these requirements are really similar to the requirements of probability that we have discussed earlier in the course. So in this video, we define what a probability distribution is. We did an example, and then we talked about the two requirements of a probability distribution.